Hi everyone, welcome to this video report on Annual Conference 2024. For those of you I haven't met, my name is Tim Emmett. I'm the senior pastor here at Canyon United Methodist Church, and this video report is really primarily for the members and friends of Canyon UMC, but anyone is welcome to celebrate the annual conference with us this year. As most of you know, Annual Conference is an annual gathering of lay and clergy delegates from every United Methodist Church in the North Georgia Conference of the United Methodist Church. My job today is to share the main actions taken by the annual conference, decisions made, actions taken that will impact us directly or indirectly here at Canyon. First of all, we adopted a new district structure, reducing the number of districts from 8 to 5. Most of you know that the annual conference is subdivided into districts. We are currently part of the Central East District. In the future, beginning July 1st, we'll be part of the Northeast District. You'll hear more about that in the future. In addition, lay and clergy delegates approved the recommendation for a new conference center. Conference staff has been renting space for several years, and going forward, they will take over what has been the Sugarloaf United Methodist Church, Pastor Heather's previous church. It's a large, underutilized facility. It's centrally located in the annual conference and will be a great resource for the conference staff and the annual conference as a whole. The delegates also approved an $11 million budget, which represented a 25% reduction over the budget for this year, 2024. We approved the retirement of 26 pastors who collectively represented, I think, 490 years of service. Those retirees included former Camden pastors Amy Morgan, Terry Walton, and Sandra Jones. In addition, at the service of licensing, commissioning, and ordination, on Friday night, we licensed, sorry, I got to get the terms right. We had licensed 6 lay pastors. Those are lay people who are licensed to serve local churches as pastors. We also commissioned 8 provisional members, so those are people who are just beginning their journey toward ordination as a pastor. We ordained 1 deacon and 14 new elders, full members. Those are pastors who've been provisional members. Now they are full members of the annual conference as elders, which is what Heather and I are. Finally, on the last day of the conference, and I usually don't mention this, but I think it's important, as part of the closing of the conference, the bishop officially fixes the appointments. And before that point, any of the appointments can technically be changed, but there is this moment at the end of annual conference when the bishop fixes the appointments, and every church and every pastor in the annual conference is listed, and they are all officially fixed. And so then that's when it becomes official, that pastors will be where they will be, churches will have who they will have, and for at least 1 year, that's who we are, that's where we are. So that's a quick snapshot of the decisions made, the actions taken at the annual conference this year. Happy to have Heather, Rick, Beth, and Rhi share a bit more about their experience of annual conference this time around.
I'm excited to get to share with you just a few high points of annual conference last week. The first thing is that there was just such a spirit of excitement and energy across the annual conference. Every day that we spent together, there was a lot of joy, I have to say that. And it felt different than previous years that I have been a part of. The conference itself is typically bracketed within an opening worship service, the ordination and commissioning service that's mid-conference, and then the closing worship service as well. I have to say the ordination and commissioning service that happened on Friday night was incredibly moving. Bishop Dees actually shared that the bishop that preached when she was elected came to her and told her that he had her back. And I have to say, as a woman who is a clergy person, that was refreshing to hear, and it actually made me tear up a little bit to know that someone came to her and told her that he had her back. The second thing about the ordination service that was just absolutely remarkable was at the end of the worship service, we historically invite those who are feeling called to ministry to come forward and to respond. What I saw that evening was something I'd never seen before, and that was about 20 youth and young adults that came forward some of which are pastors' children, which is incredibly remarkable and just something to celebrate. It was a very moving closing to that worship service. And then finally, our final worship service where the bishop preached and then they set the appointments for the new conference year was also incredibly inspiring. And I just encourage you, if you have the opportunity, to go online as those are made available to everyone, to give that worship service especially a listen as you hear what she has to share. I'll just leave you with this. One of the themes of the worship service that the Wisconsin bishop preached at was big love. And it was something that just continues to refrain in my mind again and again, big love. What a joy to participate in this year's annual conference.
Hey Canon, this is Beth Blakely. I was a lay delegate to annual conference this year. It was my first one, and I'd like to tell you about my experience.
Hi, I'm Rick Adams, and I was a delegate at this year's annual conference representing Canon United Methodist Church. What impacted me most this conference than other ones was the youth. Now the youth are always a part of the conference. They sit down in the front rows right in front of the bishop's table, and they help and officiate during services as acolytes and all. And they also, anytime there's an offering, they're the ones who spread across the entire convention floor and help in collecting the offering. But this year, while everything was going great, I mean, everybody was yes, 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 and all the votes, everything was going through. There was no debates really going on any of the issues. And we were at the end of Standing Rules Committee report and all their changes, and then a youth stood up and wanted to make an amendment. Now, a lot of times that stirs things up and you get, yeses and nos. And here was his point. We have just changed from 8 districts to 5 districts in our conference, and the bylaws say that for every district, 6 youth are appointed for annual conference, which would have meant that next year there would only be 30 youth. So his amendment was to change that bylaw to 10 youth per district. And of course, a lot of acceptance by the youth. There is a chance when an amendment comes up or anything to have 3 for and 3 against speeches. Well, we only got 3 for speeches, and who were these people giving the speeches? More of the youth. It passed with, I think, 98%. And not only was it a cheer from the youth, there was a cheer throughout the entire convention center. Everybody excited about this kind of involvement and maturity from the youth. But that wasn't enough. That night, we had our ordination and licensing ceremonies. And at the end, Bishop Deese came out and she made an invitation for other people to join this group of people of eventually being pastors. And first an acolyte came up who was dressed in white and all that, and then 2 more youth jumped up and some more youth jumped up. Before you knew it, the entire stage was filled with young people making a commitment for their future to serve God. Wow, what an impact.
I'd like to tell you about what impacted me the most at annual conference, and what that was the youth. As you may know, there's youth delegates to the annual conference, and they all sit up in the front together, and they all have fun together. And the second to the last, I guess it was last night, they did the commissioning of all the new elders and everything, and at the end of it, the bishop asked for people to come up who felt a calling to maybe go into ministry or something. And I'm gonna get misty, the entire youth delegation went up to the stage. And when you look around a room and you see a lot of gray hair and you wonder about the future of the church, it was there, and it was committed to furthering our church.
When asked to answer the question, what impacted me the most, one thing comes to mind. At the end of our last night at annual conference, Bishop Deese called upon anyone who felt a calling to join her on stage. Anyone was welcome, and you could go up if you just wanted a hug or a prayer from the bishop or clergy. A group of the youth I was with, including myself, went up on stage and we found each other, forming a tangled hug of a circle of sweat and tears and love and faith and friendship and fellowship. One of the clergy members held us and she prayed for us and led us in the last of the songs from that night. That moment was certainly the most impactful, and I'm sure I will remember it for the rest of my life. I was asked what surprised me at annual conference. Going into conference, many of the youth, including myself, had a plan to amend one of the standing rules to maintain our youth representation. This was my first year at conference, so I didn't know what to expect, and we had been warned that there may be a lot of backlash, that we may be forced to offer up a compromise and lose some of our say. What ended up happening was the exact opposite. No one had anything to say against us, and everyone listened to our voices. In a congregation of hundreds, only 11 people voted against us. In the making of that decision, we really were United Methodists, and I was both surprised and overjoyed at the result.
The question is what surprised me at annual conference this year? Bishop Deese. And what happened with Bishop Deese that surprised me? Well, I have to confess, first of all, that I have shared something since we've been going through this disaffiliation experience in the Methodist Church, which has truly hurt me. I've had some lifelong friends in other churches who are a part of that. But what I've said in private conversation with a few people was biblical. I said, well, this is God pruning. I've not heard that anywhere else. And in Bishop Deese's sermon on the last day, she began by saying she was sorry for all that we've had to go through, sorry for all the conflicts. And then she said she's not sorry that we're not having to have that anymore. And then she talked about she saw this as a pruning. Wow, I was surprised. I wasn't the only one with those thoughts.
Something that I learned at annual conference is just how varied and diverse our annual conference is. There's just a rainbow of people in a rainbow of colors, in a rainbow of lifestyles, and it just felt so at home and so wonderful, and that's something that I learned about our annual conference.
Having it been my first time attending AC, the whole process was a learning experience. I learned things from how to work a BlackBerry to how to become a bishop and be a good United Methodist. I learned people's stories. I learned of our setbacks, but also of our many accomplishments. I learned of the ways we were transforming the world and how I could be a part of that. Having been surrounded by people in all different places of their United Methodist journey, I believe that no matter where I would have been or how many years I would have attended, I would have gained knowledge and that everyone has something to learn from annual conference.
What I'd like to share with those who have never been to annual conference is what you might discover if you've got the chance to go. And I would recommend anybody ever going, is that you discover the impact that little offering you put in the plate or in the online, the impact that it makes in our community, in the North Georgia Conference, but throughout the entire world. Because we get reports from scouting, from Well Root, from Murphy Harps, from all the different things that we are part of and touch from that little bit is just exciting. My first year I went, there was a big celebration. I was just overwhelmed with wow, this is what my church is doing. And well, it returned this year, and it was great to see all these wonderful reports about all the things that United Methodist Church do for the good of the world.
Overall, I think people should know that this is a magical experience that anyone can gain something from. It is important to show up and represent so that together we can better the transformation of our world.
Something I'd like everyone to know about annual conference, especially since it was my first annual conference, is it's comforting and warm and lovely. And I went in completely nervous and afraid because I didn't know what to expect. And within like the first 30 minutes, I was like, I am home. This is amazing. And I saw pastors that I knew and people that I knew. And it was just surprising to me. Now I'm doing surprising. It's just surprising to me how wonderful it was to be someplace that I was nervous about and I didn't know. And I would encourage anyone to be a lay delegate, to be a canon delegate, however you need to get there, to do it, because it's quite an experience.